You're an immigrant, you tend to hang out with fellow immigrants because you speak funny or what, all that kind of stuff. And usually, because immigrants also are, when they get to school over there, they're usually doing much, much better than the indigenous people. You see, our parents come from a generation that has been taught a lot by media. You cannot deny what you see on TV as affecting you.
Bloods and Crips thing was going down.
Crips, and then they had the whole, the US government even went to Congress where they're banning rap and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Mexicans are accepting of everybody. And I believe I think you can concur to that.
I won't say that. I'm from Cali, man. We got...
Okay, yeah, you got the whole cool. Mexican gangs.
It's not cool. Yeah, we feel a certain way about...
Hi guys, welcome to the Ep.195 Podcast. My name is Janita Maya, and on today's episode, we are joined by Brian Mwafrika. Just to give you guys a background about him, he was born in Uganda, moved to the US when he was 18, lived in the US for 12 years and got married to an African American, moved back to Uganda when he was 30 in 2017. Is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
I'm an engineer by profession.
That.
Mainly run 4 businesses in Uganda. I say there are 4. Farming, I have a kitchen, which is like a restaurant. Safaris, I do travel. And the main one, which is engineering. I construct modular houses. I use interlocking bricks to do modular housing because my target is low-cost housing in Uganda. So those are the main things I do. Yeah. And I've been back, it's coming to 6-7 years now.
Yeah.
I moved back in 2017. I live off grid. I have my own electricity, like I use solar energy, and then I have my own water. So I'm not on the grid at all. And I always tell people Uganda is the easiest place to stay. And the way I achieved that was to do that, to be off grid, because the only thing now I have to do is buy food. And in Uganda, food is cheap.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking behind the scenes, and you said you commend O'Shea for staying in Uganda for this long, because a typical African American would not survive in Africa or Uganda, to be exact.
Yeah, my wife is African American, and I remember when we started dating, I asked her, I'm like, if we're to date for real, just know that I'm moving back home to Uganda. My goal was to come back when I was 40, but some things happened that pushed me to come back earlier. Now, she's like, I've always wanted to live in a predominantly African country because her parents raised her Pan-African. She's an African American with her ancestry or going all the way back to Virginia. Like some of her ancestors were slaves in Virginia. That's one thing I know. So I wanted her to know that Uganda is not, an easy place. I'm one of those people who promotes Uganda all the time. I always tell people Uganda is the best place to live. So she's like, you know what? If it's Uganda, then I'll live in Uganda. So I'm like, okay, but let's go check it out first. Before you do what? We take this relationship any further. So like 6 months into our dating, we came to Uganda. We spent 5 weeks. My wife loved Uganda. She loves the people. Ugandans are the most hospitable people. I think you would agree with that. She loved the people. And she, there was, of course, cultural shock. She's never been in a place where her skin color was the predominant color. She would wake up, open newspapers, she's seeing black faces. So that whole concept is so foreign to her. Seeing this dark face. We're a lot darker than people who are black over there because of our sun and all that.
Yeah.
So even the weather, everything was such a shock to her, but at the same time it was so awesome. The food we have in Uganda is crazy in abundance in terms of like she could eat vegetables, which you'd pay $200 for there. Over here, it's so cheap. So she loved it, but she still struggled with some issues about Uganda. And
like what were the issues she struggled with?
One of them is how we lack, in my opinion, personal boundaries. African Americans have kind of gotten into that space of what I would like to say how white people are, whereby you have to call before you show up.
Definitely.
In Uganda, yes, it's starting to pick up because we're getting, a lot of Western education. Through media, through school, it's a lot of Western stuff. We started sliding towards that. I like to call it very egocentric and very, like, I like to say kind of selfish way of looking at things, whereas our parents, the previous generation, he would tell you, our parents were, they would like welcomed everybody. Guys would come from the village and just show up, and they would show up and you have to make room for them where to sleep and stuff like that. Then you would serve food to them. You would treat them like they're, meant to be there. Like you were even expecting them. Would keep the best things for the guests.
Yeah.
Even African Americans kind of do that a little bit. But to us, it's like on another level, So if you're used to that lifestyle in the US where, people have those boundaries and they call before they show up and all that, and you come here, it's gonna test you. It's gonna drive you crazy. And it's like to be an introvert here is a problem. My wife is an introvert and I'm an extrovert. So to me, I have no problem if my friends showed up at midnight at my house. Man, it's my buddy. Wow. What? Some people may not find that okay.
Yeah.
But like if my friends showed up and they needed something or whatever, I would find it okay.
Yeah.
But there's certain things about like living in the US or whatever that makes you start seeing those boundaries that people set over there, And that's, I think, something she struggled with a lot.
Okay.
Then it was also the language, because, Ugandans, it's so easy to be here because we speak English. But at the same time, we speak English while we mix with
Luganda.
It's kind of like a pidgin.
Yeah.
Of English.
Water,
Yeah.
English.
The way we say certain words like water. So she would struggle sometimes to understand. Like I remember the first time she came and we were with my sister, and my sister kept saying a law firm. But the way she was saying it, she said she worked at a law firm. The way she said it, I work at a law firm. So, but she was hearing Lou farm. So she's like, my wife is like, I kept wondering, what's a Lou farm? Like, what do they do at a Lou farm? I'm like, no, she meant law firm, and things like that.
A law firm.
Yeah, there you go. Like,
I'm just now catching what he's.
Yeah. Then the other thing,
Right.
she told me, because I asked her, I'm like, what's the biggest shock you got when you moved to Uganda? She's like, the way you guys tell time, because we tell time opposite of the Western style. Our 7 a.m. is your 1 p.m. or 1 a.m., something like that. You get what I mean? Ugandans know, all Africans know this, because it's an African thing to tell time opposite of the Western style. But that's a cultural thing. Now, us in Uganda, many of us don't know why we do that. It's just something we learned in school and we just took it on as is. But there's actually a historical background as to why we tell time that way. It's because we tell time by the day.
So let me ask you, what was one of the reasons that you decided to, because you went to some pretty good schools here in Uganda, right?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So why did you, what led you to going into the United States in the first place?
I went to the US as an immigrant, first of all. My mom had already moved there, so she applied for me and my siblings to go over there. So that's how I moved to the US. So I left here in what we'd call senior 5 at the end of it. And I moved to the US. That's when the opportunity came. That's when my mom would allow her to bring us in terms of, even
how long was she there before you were able to come?
Man, I think she left in 98. So she had been there for about 10, 12 years or something like that.
Did she get citizenship by that point?
Yeah. Now, at that point, she was a resident.
A resident.
Of course, she's been a citizen now for a while, but she was a resident.
Okay.
And, supporting 4 kids in the US is not a joke. It's not. So she had to prepare, you had to get a house. There's so many things she had to sacrifice in order to take us over there. But when I went, because of being here, I always had this thing of, if I get that opportunity, I'm going to maximize it. In general, I'm one of those people who likes to maximize opportunities. So when I got there, I went to high school for about 6 months. Then I graduated. Then I got a scholarship to go to University of St. Thomas in Minnesota. They actually do take a lot of Ugandan kids from here because their president had been to Uganda before.
Okay, I get it.
And he loved Uganda. And he created a scholarship fund for Ugandans. Okay, it was mainly for Africans, but it was dominated by Ugandans. So that's how I ended up going to that university. It was a full ride, and I got my bachelor's and master's at University of St. Thomas in mechanical engineering. I left. I went to work for Excel Energy. Worked as a standards engineer, then a nuclear engineer.
When you moved to the States, was it Minnesota, the state where you lived during high school?
Yep. And we moved in December.
Whoa!
The 7th. I will never forget that day. We left
Why?
here on the 7th of December. And I think we arrived at, I think we left on the 6th and we arrived on the 7th. And I remember, she kept telling us, come with jackets, blah, blah, blah. In the airports, you don't feel the cold until we stepped out of the Minneapolis MSP. And woo! Minnesota cold. It's cold.
By the way, a lot of Liberians are in Minnesota, right?
Yes, a lot of Liberians.
Shout out to the LIB.
A lot of Liberians.
Shout out to the LIB.
A lot of Somalis, a lot of Eritreans, a lot of Ethiopians, a lot of Nigerians, a lot of Ghanaians. I used to literally hang out in the African community. So I ended up having more Kenyan friends than any other.
A lot of Kenyans in Minnesota.
A lot. Yeah, I think it's the number 2 population in terms of Kenyans is in Minnesota after Dallas, Fort Worth.
Dallas.
area.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Let me
Most of them are.
let me just ask one last thing, because you started encountering the African American community. Because I want to get to the whole point where you say African Americans are afraid of Africa. So when did you first started meeting African Americans? Because typically, at least when I was coming up, I'm a little bit older than you. On the West Coast, when we saw Africans, they were a little bit standoffish. It wasn't as integrated as it is in New York City, DC, Philadelphia. Africans and African Americans can live together, in a lot of harmony, especially in New York City and Philly. But that wasn't the case so much on the West
Midwest.
Coast.
Most especially even in the Midwest.
So how did you start interacting with African Americans?
I first started interacting with African Americans in my high school. But I didn't have many who I would say were my friends. There's one guy called Reggie.
That's definitely a brother from the States.
Yeah, I know. He's a brother.
From the
Reggie. So Reggie was one of the first people that I kind of started talking to who was an African American. Then there's a guy I met from Louisiana. They had been
My parents
through
from Louisiana.
Katrina, and he had
New
moved-
Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans. There you go. And he'd moved to Minnesota, and so that was the other second guy that I met. But other than that, when you're an immigrant, you tend to hang out with fellow immigrants. Because you speak funny or what, all that kind of stuff. And usually, because immigrants also are, when they get to school over there, they're usually doing much, much better than the indigenous people.
Right.
So there's also that stigma that comes with, being the smart one or whatever. But the biggest thing comes from the parents. You see, our parents come from a generation that has been taught a lot by media. Even us, we've been taught by media. I remember when I was about to move, my uncle, who raised me partly here in Uganda, was so afraid that I was going to get there and probably get shot or whatever.
Wait, I want to ask a question. Was that uncle still in Uganda when you went to Minnesota?
Yes, he stayed in Uganda.
Is he's still here?
No, he passed away.
He passed away, okay.
2016. But he's my father figure, is what I would put. Is what I
Yeah.
would say. So anyway, he was so worried that I'd either be shot or I'd get into drugs and things like that, because that's what they see on TV. And you cannot deny what you see on TV as affecting you. Even you in the US, a lot of African Americans really think that in Uganda, like, we don't have water, running water, we are living with wild animals, there's elephants. But because, my wife tells me what her friends think of Uganda, or some people.
Child soldiers everywhere.
Yes. When my wife moved, one friend was so worried, thinking that there's no running water in the house, and that's what was depressing her or something like that. And I'm like, these people don't really know Africa. And and I can't blame them, because when I lived there, I also saw the only thing you know about Africa is about it's on Nat Geo.
Right.
And it's talking about wildlife. It's just like us not knowing that New York is different from LA.
Right.
Like the cultures are so different.
Exactly.
Like Atlanta culture and Minneapolis culture is very different.
Very.
The black people in Minneapolis are so different from the black people in LA or in Atlanta.
Even LA and Oakland is different in the same state.
There
In
you
the
go.
same
Just
state.
different cities
Yes.
create different. Minneapolis and St. Paul, these are twin cities. That's where I lived.
Right.
the black people in St. Paul are different from the ones in
Minneapolis.
You can sense the difference.
Right.
And that's just how it is.
How it is.
But when we see it from the media's perspective, because that's the only thing that feeds us,
Right.
the information that we believe is true, So then we take it to be that. They're only showing us African Americans getting shot or we are shooting. There are ones in gang violence. And my uncle watched that stuff. You remember the whole
Bloods and Crips thing was going down.
Crips, and then they had the whole, the U.S. government even went to Congress where they're banning rap and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
The
East Coast, West Coast beef was going
all that
on
kind
at
of
the time.
nonsense. And when their kids get there, of course, the first thing they tell them, hey, don't play with those guys over there, African Americans. I have a Somali friend. He's called Haji. He lives in Minneapolis. He went to the U.S. as a refugee, but he stayed in foster care. And Haji was shunned by both.
He was
shunned by the Somalis who were immigrants.
Whoa.
And he was also shunned by like the whites or whatever. So he didn't have a place of belonging because he was in a foster care of a white man. So the Somalis were told to watch out for him. And then on the other hand, the white people also they're not accepting of him. He's a Somali,
Right.
So there's always those weird things that happen.
Did he end up kicking it with the African Americans?
No, he ended up with Mexicans.
Well, okay, that's interesting.
I asked him, how do you end up with Mexicans? When he said he needed, I think he needed a car. His car broke down his car broke down and he didn't know how to fix it and stuff like that. So he started working in a Mexican garage. That's how he learned how to be a mechanic and stuff like that. And he even learned how to do a lot of things with them. And they helped him a lot. So even up to now, he always tells me, Brian, if you need anything, you go to the Mexicans, man. And it's like Mexicans are accepting of everybody. And I believe I think you can concur to that.
I won't say that. I'm from Cali, man. We got
you got the whole cool. Mexican gangs.
It's not cool.
Yeah,
we feel a certain way about.
But I found Mexicans very accepting, even of Africans and what. Like,
when they like you, they're good people though. Yeah, that's for sure. I know that.
They're cool people with everybody.
But the blacks and the Mexicans in America it's not.
I think it's about its territorial stuff and stuff like that. But anyway, that's how Africans get to view African Americans. And vice versa. It starts becoming this animosity that you can't see. In my college, I was the president of the African National Students Association. And I was friends with a lot of the African American guys. But I knew there was that weird tension, So even I went ahead to do something with the guys of BSA, Black Students Association.
Yeah, BSA, Black Student.
Yeah.
So we had one. Black Student Union.
This one was BSA.
Okay.
They used to have a club. We had our answer club. So we even did a joint thing where we talked about our differences, why some of them, view us the way they view us and the way we view them, to kind of bridge the gap, And it actually, in my opinion, it kind of did. Because a lot of those people are still my very, very good friends. Now, they would still come to our African Nation students' performances. That's where my wife first saw me.
Whoa!
Yet I didn't notice her. At that time, I was in college. She went to a different university called U of M, University of Minnesota, and I went to St. Thomas. So she had come to see...
The Gophers?
The Gophers, yeah.
What?
Yeah, my wife is a Gopher. So,
U of M.
Yeah, so when
Burgundy and gold, right?
No, it's maroon.
Maroon, something like that.
Yeah, so
they're in the Big Ten. If it's the Big
in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Big Ten. Yeah.
The Big Ten. Yeah, their biggest rivalry is with Wisconsin, but the Badgers.
Yeah, but Wisconsin always get that ass though.
Oh,
for the most part.
Wisconsin is good at football.
Yeah, but let me ask. Let me just get me a guy involved in this a little bit. So he's a Ugandan that came from Uganda to America. You were born in America as a Ugandan. Or how much closer are you to me than somebody like him? Like if you were to encounter a guy like this coming in?
Yeah.
Because you see, you got an African-American, big-time African-American swag, bro. Like, you can switch it up, too, but a lot of times I forget that you from here. It's going to be real.
A lot of Ugandans would say he's not a Ugandan. A lot of Ugandans.
A lot of Ugandans tell me that I'm not a Ugandan.
Really?
Yes. I've been told that I'm not a Ugandan because I didn't go to school here. I didn't grow up here. I didn't experience the same struggles that people refer to in their upbringing, but I identify a lot closer with you culturally in some of your values. Take, for example.
Yeah, I want to hear about these values.
You talked about the whole personal
boundaries,
right? As I'm sitting here listening to you talk, I'm like, yep. You can't come over to my house without an invitation. You can't do it. Like, you can't do it.
That's the American side of you.
Like even my old man, for that example, when he and my mom moved back here to Uganda, they had a house in Kololo, and he gave very strict instructions to his guards at the gate. Don't just allow people to pull up on my house.
Right.
If they do not have an invitation from me, don't even let them in the gate. Because people would just start pulling up. My mom's extended family and relatives, they would just start coming through like crazy.
Right.
And he would travel a lot. So when my mom would, be home by herself and he would travel, shit, it was open season. She would let
the mothers are like that.
She would let
the
them
mothers
come
are
through,
like that. Yep.
Okay.
But when he was in the crib and somebody dared pull up uninvited,
right.
Pops
ain't having that shit.
He would be unashamed in chasing them away immediately. And now, even in my crib, my wife is asking me for permission for her sisters to come over to the crib just because she knows, like,
So
I like my
is
space.
Ugandan?
Yeah, my wife is Ugandan. I've been married for going on 6 years now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm married a Ugandan woman. She's
meet her?
wonderful. She's beautiful. I met her here in Kampala.
Oh,
Shout out to
nice.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, Ugandan women will make good wives for any person.
So
I'll
for
be
me,
honest.
like that's a big thing. Like I don't even want you to stay. Even if I invite you over, like the minute that I get bored of your company, I'm
want you to go.
I'm finding reasons for you. You got to leave.
Even off the phone with me, he'd be like, yeah, bro.
I don't like people overstaying their welcome. I don't like people assuming that they're welcome to my space because my home is my sanctuary.
Right.
So that's one way where I very much identify with that
Right.
American
Great point.
American mindset. But in a lot of other ways, I was raised to appreciate the culture of my parents because of the influences of the friends that they had.
Okay.
So I grew up in the DC area, as has been well documented, in my time on this show. And my parents had a lot of friends from the Ugandan community who were professionals, expatriate professionals. And so some of the best friends that I have to this day are the kids who, like me, were born and raised there, grew up there. And we shared a lot of experiences growing up, hanging out in each other's homes, spending holidays together. This is like in the 80s. So when my parents were 30s and early 40s, they were getting jiggy with it, having fun, having house parties with each other, right? And we little kids would be running around trying to kick it and have a good time.
Ugandans party. Wherever
They
they go.
partied. So that was kind of the vibe. And then, of course, as our parents got older, their priorities changed and the way that they socialized changed as well. But that's what grounded me in the knowledge and the understanding that I was Ugandan, was the association and the affiliation with our friends and the friends that my parents had through that extended community. But everything else was lived by the rules of the land that we were in.
You know what? This is something I studied from African Americans. There's an experience you don't get when you don't grow up in Uganda. Some of us go to boarding schools. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Boarding school is very good at destroying personal boundaries and space.
Okay.
In SMAC, where I went, the next bed was right here, and we used to fight over the space in between the two deckers. There's no personal space there. You get what I mean? So even personal boundaries are kind of removed. So that kind of also translates into our adulthood. And most especially with like guys who went to single-sex schools, girls who went to, girls are kind of different, but boys, still up to now, my closest friends are guys I went to high school with. They've been my friends for over 20-something years. We went from 2001. We're still friends. And we can sit on a table and we are eating. I can be eating and one of my friends will come and pick up food from my plate and I won't have an issue with it. You get what I mean? But I know people in the US who would literally throw their, whether they're friends or what, to me, these are like my brothers. You get what I mean?
It'll be a fight.
There you go. So there's those values. But then there's this other thing of as every human being, most especially men, always want to find their roots, like where they come from. You see, it's so important to our identity.
Yes.
That's why Obama flew all the way to Kenya to figure out who his dad was. You know, I think I went through the same journey in the last 5-6 years, trying to figure out who my dad was. You know, but that thing of trying to do that is what gives you that sense of identity. And when you have that sense of identity, sometimes it grounds you and makes you be able to move through certain things that other people wouldn't. I find that like with African Americans, they kind of have that issue of like, the US is not really their home because of the way they are treated.
Yeah.
I always tell my friends here, I'm like, you guys don't really know what it means to be a black person in the US. You see, we're taught here how African Americans are lazy, they don't know how to do stuff. The media, what they portray, you know? But like when you see how they're treated, whenever I see like an African American become successful, I always tell my friends, I'm like, I wonder how much that person has gone through. They must be like the baddest that can ever be. Because in order for you to succeed in the US, you are an African will even succeed before an African American.
Yes.
But in order for you to succeed, you have to go through so many obstacles.
Yes.
From the way society looks at you, from identity, you know, usually like your community is being decimated by like some
Drugs.
government program or drugs. Or,
my dad was on crack cocaine for years, so I know.
there you go. You get what I mean?
Yes.
And now I got to learn a lot of that from my African American friends, like what they went through, whatever. Now over here in Uganda, we're growing up like he did, with a dad who's a dark. He's working in World Bank. Your buddy's fathers were probably economists or whatever. So the image of your hero, the image of the person you're supposed to copy. You know, children learn more from what they see than what you tell them. It's very different from what an African American was gonna see. Many of them, their men are jailed. You get what I mean? Yeah. So they have that gap, you know, and I believe they get into a space sometimes that leaves them nowhere. You know, like your country is treating you like shit. You can't really call it home, and you don't really have a place you call home. You see, for me, when I say, I always tell Ugandans that one of the biggest privileges we have is we have what they call homes. Right. My home is where my dad is buried. Right. It's in Chisoro. If all things failed, you know what I would do? Jump on a bus, head to Chisoro, and raise my feet. I can grow food, there's rain, build a small, and I can survive and live. An African American doesn't have that. You get what I mean? A lot of actually people in the West don't really have that. Right. White people kind of have it because they have money. And then the system also kind of protects them more. You know, a white person, it's easier for them to get a loan than a black person. You know, all those other things that the small intricacies within the system that many people don't see that affect them. Now, me as an African who goes there, sometimes I blaze through those things because, hey, man, this is my one shot. Right. And you know, the drive I have is not the same drive as you have. Right. You know? Right. So that affects African Americans more. And I think it also affects, you know, how you end up growing up. Like for him having that figure that he could look up to. Like my wife. My wife, I like to credit her mother a lot for the way she is. She's a very pan-centric, you know, Pan-African centric is what I would call it. And it's because of the mom. The mom worked for IBM. Mom was one of the first computer programmers. You know those the people who did the stuff to the moon and what. The mom wrote the ATM code, you know, but we don't know about that. That African Americans did that stuff. Yes. You get what I mean? So now her mother always insisted on them like having black figures that they could look up to. She even would change the cake. You know how they have those like figurines? She would change and paint them black and put them on there. It's all about image. And her mom and her dad played a huge role. Her dad is an engineer. You know, he worked for Morehouse, worked for 3M, that kind of stuff. So the role models she has play a huge part in her upbringing. You know, but if majority of the population, the men are jailed and they don't see them, they're being harassed. I mean, you see how the police treats them. It destroys the person inside. Right. And that is something that we don't see, that, you will see, but I think he understands it more now that he grew up there. You get what I mean?
No, I know it very well. I mean, I have firsthand experience in it. I mean, I've been arrested.
Oh, wow.
I've been unfairly treated by people in positions of power and authority. Just because I grew up in the suburbs doesn't mean I don't understand what the harshness of reality over there was, you know? In my early 20s, after my parents moved back to Uganda, it was just me and my brothers on the ground figuring it out. And we didn't have a parachute. We didn't have a safety net. So it was just us three brothers against the world. And I was finishing my university education, trying to make it happen. But in that case, times were lean. Things were tight. And we were making our way the best way we could. And everything we did wasn't exactly ethical. I wasn't out there committing crimes, sticking people up and doing all that shit. But trust me when I tell you, like, when you have to make it happen, you have to make it happen, you know? And I have people in my family, my late brother Albert, God rest his soul, who, you know, was unfortunate to have been involved in the criminal justice system. So I've seen it firsthand what it means to be a statistic in that country. I mean, I know brothers who, I have a good friend of mine. He's back here in Uganda now, but I have a good friend of mine who was a Rwandan war child. During the genocide, he escaped Rwanda and he ended up here in Uganda for a little bit of time and ended up getting asylum to go to the United States. When he went to the United States, he was, you know, paired with a host family that was very rich, very affluent, sent him to all of the best boarding schools. They lived out like in Connecticut. So he went to Connecticut, ended up with a very affluent white family, ended up in boarding schools, going to all of these top schools that, you know, people see in these movies with, you know, great prestige and honor and class. And, you know, went to school in New York, NYU, studied, graduated, got a degree, ended up with a job in the United Nations, and then things went left for him.
How did they go left?
You know, unfortunately, his younger brothers both passed away within the same calendar year, and he fell into a deep depression, and his life just went off the rails.
I'll add something to that because I kind of have a similar relation, but I didn't get that far. And I kind of see it. I have a friend right now in the US, and I kind of see they're going through that right now. You see, when we're growing up, we're so idealistic. You have all your dreams, blah, blah, blah. And almost the whole world tells you if you work hard, you'll get it, you know? I'll be honest, I'm privileged to have been smart enough, to have the intelligence that I have, that I would perform well in school, go to the best school in Uganda and all that stuff, and perform very well in the US too. You know, so when it came to matters of using my brain and the whole education system, I'm banging it out, you know? Then I get to work in the corporate world, you know? So, you know, you feel like you belong. I mean, I'm as smart as you, you know? I did engineering. I was beating some of you in class. I mean, so you're part of the cohort, you know? So I'm working in this engineering field. Then I leave that job, the standards job that I had at Excel, and I go to the nuclear power plant. You know? Now, nuclear was my dream, you know, so they trained me to be a nuclear engineer and all that kind of stuff. And that's when I actually felt the kind of the stuff he's talking about, you know. At first, I thought I was part of everybody. In the nuclear, every nuclear power plant in the world is refueled. They do it every 2 years. So during the refueling, they do, you work for like 12-hour shifts. So I used to be with these guys in a room exactly like this size. We used to sit, 12 of us. And we used to go to the plant a lot. I used to work with them. I used to tell them stories, jokes about Uganda. I like to talk about Uganda a lot. You know, talking about my childhood. So I took these guys like they're my buddies, you know.
You guys are white, right?
These are white. I was we're like 3 black people in a plant of like for 500, no, about 1,000 employees. So
how many of those were all of them Africans? Any African Americans?
No, all
The
the
blacks.
three, the other two were African Americans. One girl was born in Michigan.
Okay.
She's from Detroit. She was called Winter. She was the she was the physicist and she was the head of the
Whoa,
vessel.
okay.
Yeah. And then another guy was a radiologist. He actually came from that town of Monticello where I worked.
Okay.
So now the thing is, I'm taking these people like they're my buddies and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And one time, I made a mistake. You see, nuclear is so safety heavy, very heavy. You have to walk holding handrails. That's why when I see people here now, their safety stuff, I always laugh. I'm like, man, this is crazy. But so I put my finger in a Coca-Cola can, whatever. And when somebody warns you, you're supposed to respond with something like, hey, that's dangerous. You're supposed to respond like, oh, thank you, I'm sorry, let me correct. So somebody told me that, it was during lunch hour, somebody told me that because of what I'd done. And my response was kind of aloof. I was like, oh, nothing will happen.
Okay.
Because my mind was in lunch. I was thinking, and I go sit down, have I was holding fruits. That's what made me do that. Sit down, and then as soon as I finish my fruits, the supervisor comes and he's like, "Are you done?" I'm like, "Yeah." We go outside, and he's like, he's like, "What you did there was not cool. This and that." It's because he had seen it. I'm like, "Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go apologize." Blah blah blah. So I think things are done there, because I went, I apologized to her. Everyone is like, "Yeah, cool. I mean, it's nothing, The next morning I come back to work, I cannot be assigned on the job. I was the best guy they had in terms of containment testing because I'm good with my hands. I'm a mechanic by, hobby, I would say. So I'm good with my hands. I was good with tools and doing that kind of stuff. So I was usually put on teams, and when everybody's praising you, oh, you're doing good. But I mean, what the heck? I mean, like every time a team went out, they'd want me to be on there, on their whatever. Then they tell you, because now we're going on top of the vessel. On top of the vessel is like the best site you'll get. I'd been up there you get to be on top of the nuclear fuel, and you can see that it's a blue glow.
Yes.
It was so awesome. So I wanted to go back to test the vessel. So I put up my hand in the morning. We have a meeting to assign jobs. And then they tell me, hey, sorry, you cannot work today. You can't go into the power plant. It's called the power plant, where you have to sign in and enter it's like you can't go into the power plant. I'm like, okay, why? I didn't get it. But the meeting gets done, and then they call me outside. Then the guy tells me, so we've revoked your whatever to get into the plant because we think your safety is questionable, blah, blah. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, so he starts telling me, one of the guys, so some of the people reported that I put my tools in like my pocket because you're not supposed to do that. But other guys were also doing it. You get what I mean? When you think you're part of the crew, you start doing things other people are also doing.
You started noticing the racism.
There you go. Because I'm like, when you're climbing ladders in a nuclear plant, you're not supposed to put tools in your pockets. We wear scrubs when we go into the plant. So scrubs only have a pocket here and in the back. So you'd put like 2 tools if you're going to do a simple job, and you go with these manuals that tell you how to do the job, and then you're supposed to put them in a bucket and pull them up. But if I had those simple tools, usually I put them in the pocket, and other guys did it, but
But you're black, so you couldn't do it.
No, hold up. So when they came to that, that's when they started saying I was doing that. Then and they were like, so because of that and the stories I told them about. Now, this I came to learn later in the investigation. My supervisor just told me, we don't think you're safe. Your stories you've told us about Uganda, it looks like safety is not a priority in your behavior, blah, blah, blah. So I was hit hard. When you're like up here and you get punched in the stomach, like you thought you belonged here? Like, please, like, seriously, like I'm sorry to you. I've never actually used that word.
Yeah, I get it.
But that's how I felt. Like they looked at me.
Right.
And I left the job.
So you got fired?
No, I was not fired. I was from the headquarters, which is downtown Minneapolis. So I was sent back to the headquarters because they hadn't fully assigned me a plant. So I was working with them for the outage. Then later I was going to be assigned to that plant. So I go back to the headquarters. I face my supervisor there. Good thing she was a Korean woman, Korean born but raised in the US. She kind of understood it. So she just told me, please don't do anything drastic. We're going to do an investigation. So the investigation comes back. Some people are complaining that. So there was this lady, she was called Carrie, and I used to call her Miss Carrie. Every morning I'd be like, good morning, Miss Carrie. You know, in Uganda, you can't just call somebody, you know, most especially somebody you respect.
Yeah.
By that. So me, I thought I was doing it as a sign of respect. But every time I would do that, she would actually tell me, Carrie is fine. But I'm very bad at picking up, whatever those cues are, you know. So
she complained about that.
She complained about that. Then they talked about, of course, my tools, and then apparently sometimes I'd use not the right gloves. Half of the crew loved me. Like she told me, like all the guys in the, you know, nuclear has a lot of Navy guys, so a lot of the Navy guys loved working with me. They're the ones who supported me. But then the other half were mostly women, didn't like me. You know, they were like, oh, he does this, he talks about this, at that. And, you know, I'm like, why wouldn't these people just tell me this stuff? So anyway, so my supervisor, because of the way things are done there, the only thing my supervisor could do is take me through a requalification. So I was like, man, this is messed up. So I went through requalification. That's another like a month or two of doing class. You basically do the same classes you did when you're getting qualified to be in the plant. And I went back to the plant. I came in towards the tail end of the outage. Then I just sat in the room, never really talked to other people. When I got my job and started working at the plant, I just kind of kept to myself, and like you just feel like you can't trust nobody. And you know, you'd be in meetings, you contribute, it's not noticed. So, you know, I was like, what the heck am I doing here? Like, I know my dream is to go home. So I got angry, and I was like, let me leave this shit. So I took, that's when I became a truck driver. Because I owned trucks when I was working. I used my salary then to get trucks with my best friend, who's Eritrean. So we split the company, and I started driving trucks because I knew where the money was. So I was like, if I get money from here, I'm going to be able to return home. Because my whole goal is make as much money as you can in the shortest time possible and move back.
Okay, let me
what it became.
Let me ask a question about the. I don't want to deviate from the topic so much, but we're talking about African Americans are afraid to come back to Africa. What do you mean by that in comparisons to? Because you said like me, you know, I'm here.
It's what the media has portrayed to you. What Africa looks. You think we're in wars all the time. That's the first thing. Because every time I've watched American TV, I barely see anything positive about Africa other than wildlife. You get what I mean? I come from Uganda, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Man, we're balling over there. Like, I know people don't have the material wealth you talk about, the money, but guys are in villages, they wake up, drink, do whatever they do, they plant, whatever of life is different from here. Now, when you come back from the US, most especially if you grew up in that Western world, your mind is tuned to value material as quality of life. Does that make sense? And in order to appreciate Uganda, you cannot look at material as the quality of life. You cannot look at me owning a Mercedes means I'm living the best life in Uganda.
Okay.
You get what I mean? You own that Mercedes, but robbers are targeting you.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
You have to build a house and put wires everywhere.
You have to watch your back all the time.
Right.
And, you know, but you're doing that because, you know, when you get trained into a Western mindset, you start valuing material over what I think African values are, which are the community. But that's what made Africans.
Do you think that's changed now? In our generation?
I think our generation is worse than our parents, as I said.
Yes.
We're more westernized. We're more selfish. We're more, everything is about me. Now it becomes me and my family and my wife and kids. In an African setting, you'll be on, I don't know if your parents told you this, but in an African setting, the brother to your father is not actually your uncle.
Yeah.
That's your father.
And you call them father.
The sister to your mother is not your mother, is not your aunt. That's your mother. But when you grow up in a Western education system that teaches you what a nuclear family is.
Mm.
You now start it's in the mind. It's programming you to think of them as different entities.
Mm.
You get what I mean? When my uncle, who was my dad's brother, was raising me, every time he would go somewhere, when he introduces me, he would say, "This is my son."
Okay.
Me, I used to say it's my uncle.
Okay.
Why? Because I was being taught English and we spoke English. And
Oh.
by that definition, he was that way. You get what I mean? But it creates a certain boundary between you two that would not be visible would not be visible if we had grown up in their setup. Because I used to wonder why my uncle felt his brothers were so close and things like that. So now, when an African American comes here, their mind has been tuned to look at material wealth or material as the standards of living, as what gives you happiness. Here, happiness mostly derives from community. It's changing with us, but it's still there. You can see. That's why our parents party a lot. I'm being honest with you.
Your parents party?
Yes.
Hell yeah.
We learned our partying from our parents. Do you know?
Not now, but I'm talking about like in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was a vibe.
Do you know? You've heard of
Celebrations
Kafunda,
everywhere.
right? You've heard of Kafunda.
I've heard of it. I don't know what it is. I've heard of it.
Kafunda means
Like a little bar?
a narrow space.
Yeah.
It actually means a narrow space place. Now, how we came to call such bars bufundas is during Idi Amin's time, they banned drinking.
They did. Oh, because he's a Muslim.
Yeah, he was Muslim and all that. So they banned drinking. So Ugandans would hide to drink. So they would go in their bedrooms and in corridors, bufunda, to drink. It was like the speakeasies of the US, So they would go and they would take their drink and sip like that. And when I look at my dad, the memories I have of my dad, he used to throw parties. They used to tell me, like, my sisters performed well in school, they slaughter a goat, they do this. That's what makes people happy. That's why you see Ugandans will go out, even when they are broke. They're like, man, I gotta go party. Like, there's something about us and that kind of feeling.
I get it.
Parents have it, they pass it on to us. We're still doing it. But of course it's changing. You get what I mean?
Well, but what is changing though? What
Our values are changing. Our values are not the same values our parents had. Our parents valued community more than we do. You get what I mean? That's the values that are changing right now. Right now, it's about me. I want to go to the US, make a lot of money so I can build a double-storied house and, have a Mercedes and what. So, maybe people can see that I've made it.
So let me ask you something. Do you think that the African Americans who are coming back to Africa are looking to gain the material wealth that they couldn't gain in the States?
No, I don't think so. The Africans that are coming back to Africa, I believe, are looking more for a sense of belonging.
Belonging?
That's the right word. You remember I said we always look for where
The origins,
our origins. Yeah. So I think they're coming looking for where they belong. I mean, they took your ancestors. They did all this nasty stuff to you guys, and and with living in a country that does not respect you the way it does, you wanna, at the end of the day, you wanna go where you're looked at as at least something, given respect. And an African American, by all means in Uganda, would be given a slightly higher status than even a normal Ugandan.
You believe so?
I believe so, 100%.
Jonita's always
Just by
said that.
speaking with your accent.
Yeah, I
They'll
say
be
it
like,
all the time.
So you think African Americans get a higher?
They do. They do.
You think they get more opportunities?
They would get more opportunities here. Just going to school in the US alone will
Yeah,
get you more
gets you
opportunities.
opportunity here.
More. I've been offered job opportunities. I just don't take them up. But it's once they know you're coming from the US, you're coming from Europe, whether you're black, you're white, automatically your status is elevated.
Yeah, even if you just went there for studies and came
Because-
back.
and
3
came
years,
back.
2 years.
Everybody's wants to what do they call it? Wants to hire such people.
Or be associated with.
Exactly.
Really?
Even
What?
association.
Oh, please. You have so many people who want to be associated with you.
Where?
To be honest with you, that wasn't my experience.
Me neither.
That wasn't my experience. When it came to the whole thing of people throwing job opportunities at you, maybe it's because I wasn't out there actively looking.
You were not actively looking.
But I mean, for me, it was more so of a social thing, because when you think about people giving you higher status in professional circles, that makes sense. But socially, it's different. It's very different.
In socially, it is. It gives you.
It's
higher
very
status.
different. No, I disagree. I disagree with you 100%. And here's why. You mentioned that you have all of these friends that you went to school with.
Yep.
Smack, right?
Yep.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't grow up here. I didn't have schooling here. I didn't share those same formative years of experience that make you remember when you were sharing grub in middle school, and you can have your friend dipping his fingers in your plate because that's what you did back in the day. I didn't have that, right? So when I'm coming here as a 30-year-old man and I'm trying to establish relationships with people, my priority in the let's call it the hierarchy of who people are going to give consideration to is automatically lower, because you don't have that historical loyalty to me.
Okay,
That's true.
Now relationships become transactional.
Okay, that should be
Right?
next podcast.
So
topic.
I'm coming here looking for connections that are genuine, and I'm giving of myself to people for the sake of building rapport and trying to connect with people on a one-to-one level of, I want to help you succeed. I'm being looked at as, okay,
He's got money.
he not even about money per se, because I'm presenting myself as a solution creator.
Right.
I'm presenting myself as a willing contributor.
right.
Even if it's just about my intellect and my capacity to develop strategies and solutions to help you get ahead. My thinking is, I'm going to provide you with value and you're going to reciprocate that value. Whereas the reality of it was, I'm providing you with value and there's no obligation to reciprocate. And socially, you have a great personality. You can have conversations with people, but ain't nobody ringing your phone off the hook to come and spend time with you and hang out with you if you don't have that history with them. So for me, my experience was vastly different.
And that is different from him because
Vastly
he
different.
grew up here. He's
Yep.
still one of the
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah.
Actually,
he's still in the community.
Actually,
whereas guys like
it's
me and
very
you are not in the
different
community.
for me because even when I was in the US, I used to come back every year.
Okay.
Spend a month in Uganda.
Okay.
Like people used to even make jokes that I had made planes look like taxis because I literally worked in the summer. You know, you have summer break in college, and all the money I made in summer, I had to save money for a ticket to Uganda. That's how bad I liked coming to Uganda. So I kept those ties with my closest friends and things like that. I see what you mean in terms of like socially being accepted. It is really hard. I can.
Do you
get
still have that problem now?
No. I mean, I've been here long enough whereby I've been able to establish relationships where people know me for me, you know? It also goes without saying, when you come here and you're a foreigner and you're labeled as a foreigner, right? Because of the energy, the attitude, and the mindset that you have and the way that you communicate, right? Certain women will be attracted to you. And dudes are haters because now this guy is coming in from outside and he's captured. No, this is the reality of the fact.
Yeah.
This is true.
Is it true?
True facts.
It is true, yeah.
True facts. So you come in with your American accent and this African American swag that you tell me that I have, and I have this confidence about myself, and I come in and I'm able to speak and articulate myself and approach women in a way that they're not used to being approached.
It's definitely an African American way of approaching too.
I'm taking all the attention of all the women that these men desire.
Oh.
And so these men, these men who I think I'm trying to form friendships with become my biggest haters.
That's
I told you that too. I told you that.
Okay, here's the thing. I can agree with that. You know why? Man, this is gonna sound so bad, but
Go ahead and say it.
I gotta be honest. Growing up in the system that we have, we develop, in my opinion, a huge inferiority complex.
Big time.
Thank you.
You get what I mean? Even the things we learn are diminishing our egos. We learn about how the British killed Kabalega, who's one of the greatest kings.
Yeah.
But they don't talk about him as the great king. He's talked about as the loser to the British. So a lot of in our image is destroyed by even our own education system. So now, with that inferiority complex, when a dude like this shows up, I mean, he's an African American, he's good looking, he's got that accent, he's, women are gonna fall heads over him. Even in the US, are you gonna tell me you don't get attention from women in the US? Just from him alone. I'm just talking about
He's technically a Ugandan American.
Okay, Ugandan American.
I'm African American.
Yeah, you're African American. He's Ugandan American. That's very true. That is the actual.
Want to put it out there, but we still love him though. He's still one of us. But
Facts.
We want to.
Yeah.
He's one step removed. But
I want to ask you guys a question though. I have a hypothesis that can't be proven unless you look at some very empirical statistical data. But back on the topic of African Americans coming to Uganda or Africa for that matter.
Yeah.
You talked about people wanting to come to the continent for the sake of belonging, for being a part of a community and whatnot.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, does the point of origin within the United States have a stronger bearing on their rate of success in finding a happy or a stable existence here?
Very fucking good question.
So, for example, you're from Sacramento, California, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about how the different communities across one state are so different.
Yep.
The cultural differences, right?
Yep.
So can somebody come here from a concrete jungle like Brooklyn, New York, and survive the same way somebody who grows up in the cornfields of Midwestern?
From our community?
Let Oshek talk about it because he's moved here.
I don't know. I don't want to throw too many like general cultural stereotypes out there, but
It's a great question.
that's just something that I'm curious about.
It's a great question. First of all, let me just say I think that most of the African Americans are primarily in the South from the slave states, so they're still there. So
Atlanta.
yeah, Atlanta, Mississippi, nothing but blacks and stuff like that. I don't think it matters because now some of the people like in the South Carolina, we have the Geechee Gullas there. They're from our community. They have a strong African culture still within their existence in South Carolina, some parts of Georgia. So culturally, they might be, and some of the people that live, let's say we call it in the country, not just to call it the village here.
Yeah.
That might be a little easier, but I still don't think that it really matters because to do well here as an African American, first of all, it's very difficult for a person to come here the first time and stay. Although we know Zara and Julia did that. You would need to build up your contact list. I came to Uganda before I settled here like 17 times.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of times. And how long were you staying all those times?
2-3 weeks, a month.
That's pretty good.
So I just keep coming back. It's just like medical school. I went to medical school, and medical school is like, the information is like drinking water out of a fire hose. That's the amount of information that you can get. So I think this is a training that you have to do because nothing can prepare you for Uganda. Even Ugandans in the diaspora have struggles. They call me like, how do you do what you do there?
Yeah, that's a fact.
But Uganda, you need so much help. The one thing about the States, if you're from the West Coast, down south, Mississippi, we talked about this before. If I go to a Baptist church, most African-American older churches are called, in Baptist communities, Shiloh Baptist. You will see a Mount Calvary Baptist. You'll see Second Baptist. Whites have First Baptist. We have Second Baptist. Second or Third Baptist.
So, I never actually understood the difference between the two Baptist churches.
Whites always have First Baptist, and the blacks have Second. So the oldest churches you'll always see is Shiloh Baptist, or in any DC, Baltimore, churches always started right after slavery. So if I go to Shiloh Baptist in any African-American community, I know every song. We have the New Baptist hymnal. There's nothing I'm shocked about. We come from different cultures though, because somebody in Minneapolis is different. Yep. If I go to Minneapolis, Bank of America is still there, Walmart is there, but that's not the case here. You here, it's I'm still learning every day. Like before we were talking, you were talking about something I had no fucking idea what it was about. So the learning curve is so great, it would not matter. The only thing that would benefit that person is let's say if it's an African-American that lived in Boston and he had a lot of Ugandan friends, then he would have an advantage. He would have an advantage. If he had Ugandan friends and knew people in Uganda, he would have an advantage over somebody completely.
The biggest thing that I believe makes Uganda hard, in my opinion, is the things that you're used to doing over there or you're used to getting over there and the things that you get here. I don't know how to explain it, but it's so, like, navigating Uganda is complex. Very. In terms of, like, I want to get, the only thing you can easily get is food. As you're driving home, food is on the roadside. Yeah. blah, 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 blah. But if you want the things that are in the US that you're used to, like let me say, you want to get a particular products, that will be hard for you. But then also just the way services are delivered, the way people do things here, like that makes it so much harder for you to navigate here, because it's like you have to learn a whole new culture of how people deal with life here. The fact, like how we deal with time. I've done so many things with Ugandans that, in the back of the mind, I have to literally switch off my American training or whatever that I got from the US. I have to literally switch it off and say, I'm trusting this guy to do the job. And 95% of the time, actually, let me not say 95, but I'll say 90% of the time, I've been disappointed.
So before we finish this episode, you talked about Black people not being so adventurous, or taking the risk to come to Africa and making it or something.
Okay. I'm just going to do it with my usual scientific way of connecting things.
Okay.
Naturally, our ancestors, Black people, in my opinion, are the people who stayed in this comfortable zone of life. Everything thrives here, man. Even, so I have so many diseases. But anyway, now, to step out of your comfort zone and is more of an adventure. You're going out unknown worlds to try and check out things. Africans are not that adventurous. Us as Africans, I know that for a fact, because with my own adventurous ways of doing things, people are saying that I have a white way of doing things. That's one. Now, even when you go to African Americans, they have the same kind of thing. There are very few African Americans that are adventurous. How many African Americans do you know that have skydived?
No, hell no.
How many do you know have got just swimming alone?
No.
Is a very good example.
Black people don't go camping.
They don't go camping.
Hell no.
They don't do all those things.
That's why we don't
That's
never
part
die
of
out there
adventure.
like that.
And and adventure is driven by usually search for knowledge or search for something. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And I believe both us as Black people, we kind of suffer from that kind of thing. We're afraid of the unknown. We tend not to trust what we read in books. We tend not to trust. We trust what we trust in books is Bible, but we don't trust the science.
Yeah.
I'm just being real.
Yeah.
Like how many times I had to explain to my friends about like the COVID vaccine, and yet they want to tell me about like Bible verses and stuff like that, how that's, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the things we want to believe are real don't make sense, like ghosts and what, you get what I mean?
Right.
And the things that are actually real, we don't take them seriously.
Uh-oh.
You get what I mean? If it was up to Africans, would never gone to the moon. I'm just being real. Because in order to go to a place like space, very unknown, it's dangerous. It's you have to have that adventurous spirit of like, let me go and just find out what's out there.
Right.
And it has to be a drive within you. It has to exceed everything.
Europeans are like that.
Exactly.
More or less
That's why they
That's
came
true.
to explore Africa and then came back to colonize. Explorers will always colonize the natives. Look, even if you look at now, let's leave Africa. I've done a lot of European history. The English were colonized by the Vikings because the Vikings explored more. The Vikings are Germanic people. They explored more and went into the harshest places. You get what I mean? They are infertile, so they had to learn how to live on the sea. They built boats, went and attacked England. They conquered the English, did all this nonsense to them. But when the English learned and came out better to fight like them and all that, then what did the English do? They went out conquering everybody else.
I got it.
Because they had learned
How to explore.
You know that saying, the slave doesn't want to be the master?
Yes.
So the slave doesn't want to be free, they want to be the master.
Yeah.
It kind of leans into that. If you subjugate people for so long, later when they learn your tricks and everything, they'll end up beating you at the game because they still have that pocket of knowledge that you don't have about the place. You get what I mean? So, and I think that all comes down to adventurism and everything, because now the British had to sail boats and the Spanish, let's start with the Spanish. They went, you couldn't see where the world ends. They get into a boat and they go. But But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
There's that lack of adventurous spirit within us.
Okay. Thank you so much for that piece of
Still like
information.
going skydiving.
Where can the people find you if they want to reach out to you as we go to another episode?
Where can they find me?
Like on social media? I know
On
you're
Social.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No,
You live
literally
off the
find
grid.
you.
Find me off the grid.
No. So I have there's tafarisafaris.com. That's my travel site. Then on Facebook, I go by Osende Mwafrika. Then YouTube is Tafari Safaris. I have a Twitter account. It's I think it's BM Osende.
Okay. Thank you so much. Guys, we've come to the end of this episode. Well, you can follow us at Kenganda Nation on all social media platforms. You can follow Agaba at Master Gabs. You can follow me at Janita Maya. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.